Trump and his chief strategist, Steve Bannon. It's called Devil's Bargain. Steve Bannon, Donald Trump, and the storming of the presidency. Here to discuss, senior media correspondent Brian Stelter, senior political commentator Matt Lewis, senior political analyst Tara Palmieri, and Kurt Bardella, former spokesman for Breitbart News. This is juicy. Let's talk. Brian, you first. Joshua Green's book, I mean, it's getting a lot of buzz because it's full of anecdotes from the campaign. Here's what he told Anderson Cooper about how New Jersey Governor Chris Christie got chewed out on election night.
Christie had been irking a lot of people in Trump's inner circle. Trump advisors told me that Christie was smothering the president. And on election night, Christie had somehow arranged with Obama's people that if Trump won, Obama was supposed to call Christie's cell phone and he would hand it to Trump. And Trump didn't like the fact, A, that Christie was inserting himself in this pivotal moment, and B, he's a germaphobe and he didn't want to take Chris Christie's cell phone, and kind of lashed out at him using words that we can't say on CNN. And that was really, in a lot of ways, the end of Chris Christie. He disappeared pretty quickly. Really? You know, that moment and in the days that followed, you know, he wound up going from being in charge of the transition and maybe ticketed for a job like Attorney General, some high-level job in the Trump administration, to being completely on the outs, sent back to New Jersey.
So Chris Christie was trying to be dominant. He's trying to dominate the moment. And then the ultimate sin, the offering, a germ-laden phone to a president who doesn't like germs, who's a germaphobe.
This sort of explains some of the mystery around Christie, Trump, and what happened after election night. And Joshua Green, he's very well sourced. He's been working on this for a while. It's one of the first big books about what happened during the campaign, what led up to the election. #1 on Amazon today. So these scoops, these disclosures, I think they're taking us behind the scenes of what really happened.
Yeah. But you know what? I saw Christie on another network today disputing this specific story, and his argument actually rings true if you think about it. This was going to be Barack Obama calling Donald Trump if he won. Basically, not a concession because he wasn't running against Obama. Does anybody think that Donald Trump would be upset with wanting to receive a call after he won? I don't know. That one, I think it sounds like a great book. That one, I'm inclined to think Christie might be right.
But I don't want to touch your phone. No.
Well, it's right here, Don.
I don't know. But I mean, I have to ask you, this is another story, and I should give you, there's a warning here about the words that are being spoken, and maybe you can infer, I'm not going to say them, but here, this one is about House Speaker Paul Ryan, who Bannon feared would try to take the nomination from Trump. And then Green writes in his book that Bannon used his role as head of Breitbart News to trash Ryan and wage this foul-mouthed assault on him at Breitbart headquarters, calling him a limp DMFer who was born in a petri dish at the Heritage Foundation. What do you think of that, Matt?
Well, the first two things, the limp and then the MF thing, are actually contradictory. I don't think you can be both, right? It's mutually exclusive. Having said that...
Thank you, Matt.
It's late night. Having said that, this one actually rings true to me. We know that Steve Bannon...
This is Bannon.
Steve Bannon doesn't...
This sounds like Steve Bannon.
It sounds like Steve Bannon. He doesn't like Paul Ryan. And the thing that interested me about this is it supposedly happened at the Heritage Foundation. That's a weird place to be dropping this kind of language. That's not a late night show.
A petri dish at the Heritage Foundation.
Right, created.
Okay.
But when we think about all of the internal rivalries, the intramural politics in the Republican Party, Bannon versus Ryan, this is something to keep an eye on as they try to get this health care bill through.
The man we should be asking about this is Kurt, because Kurt, you work there. What do you think?
Well, I mean, this is vintage Steve Bannon, and you remember at the end of last year, as the campaign was heading to the closing sides, on the pages of Breitbart, there were story after story about how there was a headline that Paul Ryan was colluding with Hillary Clinton to help her win at the expense of Donald Trump, and that story was written by Julia Hahn, who's Steve Bannon's right-hand person in the White House. And I think Brian is right that this is one of the more consequential relationships to watch. And as Trump's legislative failures continue to rack up, at some point, I fully expect there to be a full tilt turn against Paul Ryan. Steve has made it no secret, and Breitbart's made it no secret, that they don't want Paul Ryan in as a speaker. When they took down, in their words, John Boehner and Eric Cantor, they had the idea that they would replace those leadership figures with people that were aligned with them. And, you know, as Steve has artfully put it, you know, Paul Ryan is part of the very establishment in the Republican Party that Steve wants to destroy.
Interesting. Listen, I have to say this before I get to you, Tara, that we have asked Steve Bannon to appear on CNN many times on many issues, and he always declined, but we'd be happy to have him on at any time if he wants to respond to this or anything else. So, Tara, Steve Bannon came in to lead the campaign. This was after Paul Manafort got fired. In the book, Green tells of Donald Trump blowing up, a story about Donald Trump blowing up at Manafort after a negative article came out in the New York Times and said that this about aides making TV appearances. He said, "You think you've got to go on TV to talk about me?" Trump shouted. "You treat me like a baby. Am I like a baby to you? I sit there, sorry, I sit there like a little baby and watch TV and you talk to me. Am I a effing baby, Paul?" I mean, it's kind of funny because all that's running through my mind is nobody puts baby in the corner, right? Is that what
I'm thinking
everybody's thinking?
Like I'm a clown? Like funny? Like
Am I funny?
how?
Like funny how? Like funny haha, right? I mean, but it's well known that aides talk to the president via TV.
True.
Right. They want to get their message across. They tend to speak to him on television because they know he's watching. It's not, I've heard from many aides that Trump does have a salty mouth, and he's used that foul language not just on Paul Manafort, but on Steve Bannon himself. He's undressed him in front of other aides as well. He's done this to his chief of staff pretty regularly, Ryan Priebus. Trump has a very direct way of speaking to his staff, and it makes sense that he would be attracted to someone like Steve Bannon because he has the same sort of style as well. You know, at the end of the day, aides do say they feel like they have to manage Trump in some ways, and they do think that the only way to plant an idea in his head is to either say it through the media or to somehow make him think it was his idea, which, you know, is very typical when you're dealing with someone who tends to think that they have the best ideas. But Trump does actually really rely on Steve Bannon. He carries like the torch for his base. He really has the heart of the people that he is supposed to be delivering his campaign promises for, and Steve really keeps him on track. And at the end of the day, I think that Steve knows and that Trump knows that they need each other, and that Steve actually does need Steve, and he could actually turn the entire Breitbart apparatus on Trump, and that could be really damaging to him.
Yeah. Are we surprised, though, that foul language is used in a
It's like gambling in Casablanca. I don't think so.
Does gambling happen in Las Vegas?
But it's helpful to hear about it.
It is
it's helpful to hear behind the
People write these books all the
to
time.
know how this really works.
People, the Hillary Clinton campaign book, the Clinton people were not happy about that.
That's right.
They talked about the behind the scenes in that. But we're not done yet because we're going to talk about, let's see, Megyn Kelly, his treatment of women. All of that was written about in this book. We'll be right back.